Hi guys. Okay, so I went to school today and I got the Harry Potter book. So this is going to be my first video of reading that to you. This is my first YouTube video. I've never done that before, so I'm still kind of learning how to do that and navigate all of that. So hopefully I learned quickly, I guess. So, if you remember, where we left off was it was Christmas for Harry, and he was staying at Hogwarts with Ron, and he had just opened some gifts. So, I'm gonna do like maybe 10-15 minutes of reading to you every day, and when we get through the book, we get through the book. Oh, and I'm at home, and Hannah and Emma are here, so hopefully I don't get interrupted. We'll see. So I'm also, as you know, we're doing the illustrated book, so I'm gonna just read and then turn it so you can see the pictures just like I was doing at school. Okay? Hopefully you can hear me. I'll try and talk loud. So Harry had never in all his life had such a Christmas dinner. 100 fat roast turkeys, mountains of roast and boiled potatoes, platters of fat chipolatas, turn greens of buttered peas, silver boats of thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce, and stacks of wizard crackers every few feet along the table. These fantastic crackers were nothing like the feeble muggle ones the Dursleys usually bought, with their little plastic toys and their flimsy paper hats. Harry pulled a wizard cracker with Fred, and it didn't just bang. It went off with a blast like a cannon and engulfed them all in a cloud of blue smoke. Well, from the inside exploded a rear emerald hat and several live white mice. Up on the high table, Dumbledore swapped his pointed wizard hat for a flowered bonnet and was chuckling merrily at Professor Flitwick's hat. A joke that Professor Flitwick had just read him. Flaming Christmas puddings followed the turkey. Percy nearly broke his tooth on a silver sickle embedded in his slice. Harry watched Hagrid getting redder and redder in the face as he called for more wine, finally kissing Professor McGonagall on the cheek, who, to Harry's amazement, giggled and blushed, her top hat lopsided. When Harry finally left the table, he was laden down with a stack of things out of the crackers, including a pack of non-explodable luminous balloons, a grow-your-own-warts kit, and his own new wizard chess set. The white mice had disappeared, and Harry had a nasty feeling that they were going to end up as Mrs. Norris's Christmas dinner. Harry and the Weasleys spent a happy afternoon having a furious snowball fight in the grounds. Then, cold, wet, and gasping for breath, they returned to the fire in the Gryffindor common room, where Harry broke in his new chess set by losing spectacularly to Ron. He suspected he wouldn't have lost so badly if Percy hadn't tried to help him so much. After the tea of turkey sandwiches, crumpets, trifle, and Christmas cake, everyone felt too full and sleepy to do much before bed, except sit and watch Percy chase Fred and George all over Gryffindor Tower because they'd stolen his prefect badge. It had been Harry's best Christmas day yet something had been nagging at the back of his mind all day. Not until he climbed into bed was he free to think about it, the invisibility cloak, and whoever had sent it to him. Ron, full of turkey and cake, with nothing mysterious to bother him, fell asleep almost as soon as he had drawn the curtains of his four-poster. Harry leaned over the side of his own bed and pulled the cloak out from under it. This had been his father's. He let the material flow over his hands, smoother than silk, light as air. Use it well, the note had said. He had tried it on now. He slipped out of bed and wrapped the cloak around himself. Looking down at his legs, he saw only moonlight and shadows. It was very funny feeling. Use it well. Suddenly, Harry felt wide awake. The whole of Hogwarts was open to him in this cloak. Excitement flooded through him as he stood there in the dark and silence. He could go anywhere in this, anywhere, and Filch would never see him. Ron grunted in his sleep. Should Harry wake him? Something had held him back, his father's cloak. He felt that this time, the first time. He wanted to use it alone. He crept out from the dormitory, down the stairs, across the common room, and climbed through the portrait hole. Who's there? Squawked the fat lady. Harry said nothing. He walked quickly down the corridor. Where should he go? He stopped, his heart racing, and thought. And then it came to him, the restricted section in the library. He'd be able to read as long as he liked, as long as it took him to find out who Flamel was. He set off, drawing the invisibility cloak tight around him as he walked. All right, so just two pictures there of the chess pieces. The library was pitch black and very eerie. Harry lit a lamp to see his way along the rows of books. The lamp looked as if it was floating along in midair, and even though Harry could feel his arms supporting it, the sight gave him the creeps. The restricted section was right in the back of the library. Stepping carefully over the rope which separated these books from the rest of the library, he held up his lamp to read the titles. They didn't tell him much, their peeling, faded gold letters spelling words in languages Harry couldn't understand. Some had no title at all. One book had a dark stain on it that looked horribly like blood. The hairs on the back of Harry's neck prickled. Maybe he was imagining it, maybe not, but he thought a faint whispering was coming from the books, as though they knew someone was there who shouldn't be. He had to start somewhere. Setting the lamp down carefully on the floor, he looked along the bottom shelf for an interesting-looking book. A large black and silver volume caught his eye. He pulled it out with difficulty because it was very heavy, and balancing it on his knee, let it fall open. A piercing, blood-curdling shriek split the silence. The book was screaming. Harry snapped it shut, but the shriek went on and on, one high, unbroken, ear-splitting note. He stumbled backwards and knocked over his lamp, which went out at once. Panicking, he heard footsteps coming down the corridor outside. Stuffing the shrieking book back on the shelf, he ran for it. He passed Filch almost in the doorway. Filch's pale, wide eyes looked straight through him, and Harry slipped under Filch's outstretched arm and shrieked off up the corridor. The book shrieked, still ringing in his ears. He came to a sudden halt in front of the the tall suit of armor. He had been so busy getting away from the library that he hadn't paid attention to where he was going. Perhaps because it was dark, he didn't recognize where he was at all. Then there was a suit of armor near the kitchens. He knew, but he must be 5 floors above there. You asked me to come directly to you, Professor, if anyone was wandering about at night, and somebody's been in the library, the restricted section. Harry felt the blood drain out of his face. Wherever he was, Filch must have known a shortcut because his soft, greasy voice was getting nearer and nearer. To his horror, it was Snape who replied. The restricted section? Well, they can't be far. We'll catch them. Harry stood rooted to the spot as Filch and Snape came around the corner ahead. They couldn't see him, of course, but it was a narrow corridor, and if they came much nearer, they'd knock right into him. The cloak didn't stop him from being solid. He backed away as quickly as he could. A door stood ajar to his left. It was his only hope. He squeezed through, holding his breath, trying not to move. And to his relief, he managed to get inside the room without their noticing anything. They walked straight past Harry, leaned against the wall, breathing deeply, listening to their footsteps dying away. That had been close, very close. It was a few seconds before he noticed anything about the room he had hidden in. It looked like a classroom. The dark shapes of desks and chairs were piled against the walls, and there was an upturned wastepaper basket. But propped against the wall, facing him, was something that didn't look as if it belonged there. Something that looked as if someone had just put it in there to keep it out of the way. It was a magnificent mirror, as high as the ceiling, with an ornate gold frame standing on 2 clawed feet. There was an inscription carved around the top. Irized Sarud Karufu An Ushi. Wow, those are some crazy words. His panic fading now, there was no sound of Filch and Snape. Harry moved nearer to the mirror, wanting to look at it himself, but see no reflection again. He stepped in front of it. He had to clap his hands to his mouth to stop himself from screaming. He whirled around. His heart was pounding more furiously than when the book had screamed, for he had seen not only himself in the mirror, but a whole crowd of people standing right behind him. The room was empty. Breathing very fast, he turned slowly back to the mirror. There he was, reflected in it, white and scared looking, and there, reflected behind him, were at least 10 others. Harry looked over his shoulder, but still no one was there. Or were they all invisible too? Was he in fact in a room full of invisible people? And this mirror's trick was that it reflected them, invisible or not? He looked in the mirror again. A woman standing right behind him, behind his reflection, was smiling at him and waving. He reached out a hand and felt the air behind him. If she was really there, he'd touch her. Their reflections were so close together, but he felt only air. She and others existed only in the mirror. She was a very pretty woman. She had dark red hair and her eyes were just like mine, Harry thought, edging a little closer to the glass, bright green, exactly the same shape, but then he noticed that she was crying, smiling, but crying at the same time. The tall, thin, black-haired man standing next to her put his arm around her. He wore glasses and his hair was very untidy. It stuck up in the back just like Harry's did. Harry was so close to the mirror now that his nose was nearly touching that of the reflection. "Mom?" he whispered. "Dad?" They just looked at him, smiling, and slowly Harry looked into the faces of other people in the mirror and saw their pairs of green eyes like his, other noses like his, even a little old man who looked as though he had Harry's knobby knees. Harry was looking at his family for the first time in his life. The Potter smiled and waved at Harry, and he stared hungrily back at them, his hands pressed flat against the glass, as though he was hoping to fall right through it and reach them. He had a powerful kind of ache inside him, a joy, half terrible sadness. How long he stood there, he didn't know. The reflections did not fade, and he looked until a distant noise brought him back to his senses. He couldn't stay here. He had to find his way back to bed. He tore his eyes away from his mother's face, whispered, "I'll come back," and hurried out of the room. "You could have woken me up," said Ron crossly. "You can come tonight. I'm going back. I want to show you the mirror," he said. I'd like to see your mom and dad's," Ron said eagerly. "And I want to see all of your family, all of the Weasleys. You'll be able to show me your other brothers and everyone." "You can see them any old time," said Ron. "Just come around my house this summer. Anyway, maybe it only shows dead people." "Shame about not finding Flamel, though. Have some bacon or something? Have some bacon or something. Why aren't you eating anything?" Harry couldn't eat. He had seen his parents and would be seeing them again tonight. He had almost forgotten about Flamel. It didn't seem very important anymore. Who cared what the three-headed dog was guarding? Why did it matter if Snape stole it, really? "Are you all right?" said Ron. "You look odd." What Harry feared the most was that he might not be able to find the mirror room again. With Ron covered in the cloak too, they had to walk much more slowly the next night. They tried retracing Harry's route from the library, wandering around in the dark passageways for nearly an hour. "I'm freezing," said Ron. "Let's forget it and go back." "No," Harry hissed. "I know that it's here somewhere." They passed the ghost of a tall witch gliding in the opposite direction, but saw no one else. Just as Ron started moaning that his feet were dead with cold, Harry spotted the suit of armor. "It's here, just here, yes." They pushed the door open. Harry dropped the cloak from around their shoulders and ran to the mirror. There they were. His mother and father beamed at the sight of him. Okay, so here's a picture of Harry up against that mirror. He looks sad. "See," Harry whispered. "I can't see anything. Look at them all. There's loads of them. I only can see you. Look at it properly. Go on, stand where I am." Harry stepped aside, but with Ron in front of the mirror, he couldn't see his family anymore, just Ron in his pajamas. Ron, though, was staring transfixed at his image. "Look at me," he said. "Can you see all of your family standing around you?" "No, I'm alone, but I'm different. I look older. I'm head boy." "What?" "I am. I'm wearing the badge like Bill used to, and I'm holding the house cup and the Quidditch cup. I'm Quidditch captain, too." Ron tore his eyes away from the splendid sight to look excitedly at Harry. "Do you think this mirror shows the future?" "How can it? All my family are dead." "Let me have another look." "You had it to yourself last night. Give me a bit more time." "You're only holding the Quidditch cup. What's so interesting about that? I want to see my parents." "Don't push me. A sudden noise outside the corridor put an end to their discussion. They hadn't realized how loudly they had been talking. Quick! Ron threw the cloak back over them as the luminous eyes of Mrs. Norris came around the door. Ron and Harry stood quite still, both thinking the same thing. Did the cloak work on cats? After what seemed like for ages, she turned and left. This isn't safe. She might have gone for Filch. I bet she heard us. Come on. Ron pulled Harry out of the room. The snow still hadn't melted the next morning. Want to play chess, Harry? Said Ron. No. Why don't we go down to visit Hagrid? No, you go. I don't know what you're thinking about, Harry. I know what you're thinking about, Harry. That mirror. Don't go back tonight. Why not? I don't know. I've just got a bad feeling about it. And anyway, you've had too many close saves lately. Filch, Snape, and Mrs. Norris are wandering around. So what if they catch you? What if they walk into you? What if you knock something over? You sound like Hermione. I'm serious, Harry. Don't go. But Harry had only one thought in his head, which was to get back in front of that mirror, and Ron wasn't going to stop him. Okay, we're going to stop there for today. I'll see you later, guys. Oh, tell me what you think in the comments of what's happening.